The evening light fell softly over the city, painting the sky with a mix of gold and pink. Inside a tall building downtown, Daniel stood by a glass window looking down at the streets below. He wore a sharp black suit, his hair neatly combed, his expression calm but proud. In just a few weeks, he was getting married again, this time to a woman from one of the most respected families in town. Her father owned several hotels, her mother was a well-known designer, and her name opened doors that money alone never could. Daniel had worked hard to get where he was. He came from a small town, had struggled through his early years, and had once been the kind of man who counted every coin before buying a coffee. But things had changed. Now he was wealthy, confident, and surrounded by people who admired his success. The only thing that seemed to bother him was a small thought that kept returning. His first wife, Lily. Years ago, before his rise, Lily had been by his side. She wasn't rich, but she was kind and strong. She had supported him when his business ideas failed again and again. She worked late shifts at a diner while he tried to start a company. She paid the bills when he couldn't. Back then, Daniel used to say that she was his lucky star. But when his business finally took off and he began to taste wealth, something inside him changed. At first, it was small things. The way he talked to her, the way he stopped asking her opinion, the way he began to look down on her plain clothes and quiet manners. Lily noticed, but she kept hoping he would remember who they were before the money came. He didn't. Instead, he began to feel embarrassed by her. When his new business friends came over, he would avoid introducing her or pretend she wasn't around. One night, after a heated argument about attending a charity event, he told her she didn't fit into his world anymore. He said she was too simple, too ordinary. That night, Lily packed a small bag and left quietly. The next morning, Daniel found a note on the kitchen counter. It said only a few words. "I hope you find what you're looking for. Take care." Now, years later, he barely thought of that night until the day he received an idea from his new fiancée. They were sitting at a dinner table, surrounded by flowers and wedding planners. She was flipping through the guest list when she looked up and said casually, "You should invite your ex-wife." Daniel frowned. "Why would I do that?" She smiled, the kind of smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Because people will talk anyway. It would look generous, kind. Besides," she added with a light laugh, "won't it be fun to see her face? She must have nothing now. You could show her what she missed." Daniel leaned back in his chair, thinking. He hadn't seen Lily in years. He had heard through a mutual acquaintance that she had moved away after the divorce, that she was struggling to make ends meet. The thought gave him a strange satisfaction. Maybe his fiancée was right. Maybe it would be amusing to see her again, standing awkwardly among the elegant guests, realizing how far he had come without her. The next day, he asked his assistant to find Lily's address. It took a few calls, but eventually, they found her living in a small neighborhood outside the city. Daniel smiled as he signed the wedding invitation. He even added a personal note in his careful handwriting. "You're invited to my wedding. Hope to see you there." When the letter reached Lily, she was sitting at her kitchen table helping her 3 children draw pictures. The room was small but bright, filled with laughter and the smell of freshly baked bread. She opened the envelope slowly, reading the words over and over again. Her hands trembled slightly, but not from fear, from memories. For a moment, she saw flashes of the past, the tiny apartment where she and Daniel had once dreamed together, the nights she had waited for him to come home from meetings, the tears she had hidden when he told her she wasn't enough. Those wounds had healed, but scars have their own quiet way of reminding you where you've been. She put the letter down and looked out the window. The sun was setting, and the orange light touched the faces of her children. 3 bright, curious kids who looked so much like their father. They didn't know him. They had never met him. After the divorce, Lily had found out she was pregnant, and she decided not to contact Daniel. He had made it clear he wanted a new life, and she had chosen to build hers without expecting help. Her best friend Maya came by later that evening. When Lily showed her the invitation, Maya raised her eyebrows. "He invited you? After everything?" Lily nodded quietly. "Yes, I think he just wants to prove something." Maya sighed. "Then prove something back. Don't hide. Show him that you're not the same woman he left behind." At first, Lily shook her head. "I don't want to make a scene. I don't even belong in that world." But as the days passed, she couldn't stop thinking about it. Maybe she didn't want revenge. Maybe she just wanted to face her past without fear. She had spent years avoiding old memories, pretending they didn't hurt. But perhaps this was her moment to stand tall, not for Daniel, but for herself and her children. A week before the wedding, Lily made up her mind. She called a friend who owned a boutique and borrowed a simple but elegant dress, a pale blue gown that matched her eyes. She arranged for a car service, but when the company owner, who happened to be a customer of hers, heard her story, he insisted on sending a limousine. "It's on the house," he said kindly. "You've worked hard all these years. Go and show them what grace looks like." Lily smiled, touched by his words. She spent the next few days preparing calmly, helping her children choose small matching outfits. She didn't tell them much, only that they were going to a celebration. She didn't want bitterness in their hearts. She wanted them to see love, even if it was only from her side. Meanwhile, in Daniel's world, everything was grand and loud. The wedding was set to be the talk of the season. Expensive decorations filled the ballroom, photographers booked and reporters invited. Daniel's fiancée was busy with fittings and interviews, while Daniel himself felt a strange excitement about the guest who might show up. He told himself it didn't matter if Lily came or not, but deep down he wanted her there to witness his success, to see the man she had lost. On the morning of the wedding, the city buzzed with traffic and sunshine. Daniel stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie. His friends clapped him on the back, teasing him about the big day. But when one of them mentioned his ex-wife's possible arrival, he smirked and said, "If she does show up, I hope she's wearing the same old clothes. It'll make for a good story later." They all laughed. Far from the hotel, Lily helped her children into the car. She took one last look at their little home, modest but full of warmth, and whispered, "Let's go." As the limousine rolled through the city streets, people turned to look. Inside, Lily sat quietly, her hands folded on her lap, her heart steady. She wasn't there to prove anyone wrong. She was there to show her children and herself that she had nothing to be ashamed of. The car drove past places that brought back memories, the coffee shop where Daniel used to plan his business ideas, the park where they once dreamed about buying a house. She smiled softly. Life had changed, but she had survived. More than that, she had grown stronger. When the hotel came into view, shining with golden lights and a red carpet at the entrance, Lily took a deep breath. She could already see photographers and guests milling about. She could almost imagine Daniel inside, standing proud, never expecting what was about to walk through those doors. The limousine stopped. One of the hotel staff hurried forward to open the door. Lily stepped out gracefully, her children following her, their little hands holding hers. Cameras turned, heads lifted, and in a few seconds, the soft murmur of conversation fell silent. No one expected the ex-wife to arrive like this, calm, elegant, and in a car that looked like it belonged to royalty. And somewhere inside the hall, Daniel was about to learn that some surprises in life don't come wrapped in regret. They come dressed in quiet strength. The hotel entrance shimmered with golden lights, and the sound of laughter filled the air. Guests in elegant clothes moved gracefully around the red carpet, talking, smiling, and posing for pictures. No one noticed the limousine at first, but when its door opened and Lily stepped out, every pair of eyes turned toward her. She stood there quietly for a moment, holding her children's hands. Her pale blue dress caught the light, and a soft breeze played with her hair. She looked calm, not nervous or proud, just peaceful. Her 3 little ones stood beside her, dressed neatly in matching white outfits, each of them smiling shyly at the crowd. People began whispering. "Is that her?" someone asked. "That's his ex-wife, isn't it?" The doorman, unsure of what to do, bowed politely and guided her toward the main hall. The sound of music and laughter spilled from the ballroom doors as she walked in. She could see chandeliers shining above, tables covered in white silk, and hundreds of guests talking under the golden lights. Everything looked perfect, just the way Daniel liked things to be. Inside, Daniel stood near the stage, greeting guests with a confident smile. When he saw movement near the door, he turned and froze. The sight of Lily walking in, graceful and composed, made his chest tighten. For a second, he thought he was imagining it. But no, it was really her. The crowd parted as she walked through the hall, every eye following her. Her children clung gently to her hands, looking around with innocent curiosity. She walked slowly but without hesitation. Daniel's fiancée, standing beside him, noticed the change in his expression and leaned in. "Who's that?" she whispered. Daniel swallowed hard. "That's her." The fiancé raised an eyebrow. "Your ex-wife?" He nodded silently. She tilted her head slightly, studying Lily with a faint smile that didn't hide her unease. "Well," she murmured, "she certainly knows how to make an entrance." Lily finally stopped near the edge of the crowd. For a moment she just looked around, taking everything in. The glittering lights, the expensive flowers, the faces of strangers. Then her eyes met Daniel's. They hadn't seen each other in years, yet that one look carried the weight of everything they had once shared. Love, disappointment, and 1,000 memories that neither could fully forget. Daniel forced a smile and walked toward her. "You came," he said quietly, as if unsure of what to say. She nodded politely. "You invited me." He looked at her children, then back at her. "You didn't tell me you'd bring company?" Lily smiled faintly. "They're my family," she said simply. Before Daniel could respond, one of the children tugged at Lily's hand. "Mom, is he the man from the picture?" Lily froze for a second. The room went silent. Daniel's fiancée's smile faded as she looked between them. "The picture?" she asked, her voice tight. Lily crouched down, whispering softly to her child, but the question had already echoed through the hall. Guests began whispering again, curious, sensing something deeper behind the calm surface. Daniel forced a laugh, trying to steer attention away. Kids, right? Always saying funny things, but Lily didn't laugh. She stood up straight, her expression steady. "It's all right," she said quietly. "They don't mean any harm." Daniel's fiancée looked uncomfortable now. "You didn't mention she had children," she said to him, her voice sharp but low enough for only a few nearby to hear. Daniel's throat went dry. "I didn't think it mattered," he muttered. Lily's eyes met his again, and in that silence, he could feel something shift, like the ground beneath his confidence had begun to crack. One of the guests, an older woman from Daniel's company, approached with a polite smile. "What lovely children," she said kindly. "They look so much like you, Daniel." That simple sentence landed like a stone. Heads turned. The fiancé's face tightened. Daniel stammered, That's just coincidence." Lily didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her calm silence said more than words ever could. The band started playing again, trying to ease the tension. A few guests turned back to their conversations, pretending not to notice the quiet storm at the center of the room. But the whispers spread. People began asking each other who the woman was, why she looked so familiar, and why Daniel suddenly seemed pale. A waiter appeared, offering Lily a drink. She thanked him softly and stood to the side, watching the crowd with quiet grace. Her children sat at a small table nearby, giggling softly among themselves, unaware of the grown-up tension surrounding them. Daniel's fiancée excused herself and disappeared into a side room, leaving Daniel standing alone. For the first time in years, he didn't feel powerful or admired. He felt small. All around him, he could sense the weight of curious eyes. He turned and saw Lily watching her children, smiling at them with warmth and love, a kind of love he hadn't seen or felt in years. He walked over to her again. "Why did you come?" he asked quietly. She looked at him for a moment. "Because you asked me to," she said simply. "And because I wanted to see what kind of man you became." He frowned. "You think I invited you to hurt you?" Her gaze was steady. "Didn't you?" He didn't answer. Lily sighed softly. "It's all right, Daniel. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just came to show you that life doesn't end when someone walks away. It keeps going, sometimes in ways you never expect." Before he could reply, a few photographers, drawn by curiosity, began snapping pictures of them. One of them asked loudly, "Is this your first wife, sir?" The room went silent again. Daniel's fiancée had returned, and her expression was cold. She stepped forward, her voice sharp but polite. "I think we should continue with the ceremony," she said. "Our guests are waiting." Daniel nodded weakly, trying to regain control. The ceremony began, but something had changed. The joy in the room felt thinner, forced. People kept glancing toward Lily and her children. Even the officiant seemed nervous, stumbling over a few words. As the vows were read, Lily stood quietly near the back, her children watching curiously. She wasn't angry or bitter. She just felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. Watching Daniel promise forever to another woman didn't break her. It reminded her how far she'd come. She had built a new life from nothing. She had faced lonely nights, worked long hours, and still found joy in the little things: her children's laughter, her growing business, her quiet independence. When the ceremony ended, applause filled the hall. Daniel forced a smile for the cameras, but his eyes kept drifting toward the corner where Lily stood. For the first time, he wondered what his life might have been like if he hadn't let pride ruin everything. After the ceremony, guests moved to the reception area. Tables overflowed with food and wine. Laughter returned, though it carried a nervous edge. Daniel's fiancée mingled with her friends, but she kept her distance from him. Lily sat at a small table near the window, her children enjoying slices of cake. A few guests came over to compliment her manners, curious but polite. She answered their questions gently, never raising her voice, never speaking ill of anyone. Her grace impressed more people than Daniel's wealth ever had. Daniel finally approached again, unable to ignore her any longer. "You've done well," he said quietly. "You look different," she smiled faintly. "People change when they have to." He nodded, staring at the children. "They're beautiful. They're yours," she said softly. "I didn't tell you because you made it clear you wanted a new life. I didn't want to be part of your world anymore. But they're good kids. They know kindness, honesty, and love, everything I once hoped we'd build together." Daniel looked down, speechless. The noise of the party faded around them. For the first time that night, he felt the full weight of his choices. Lily stood, gathering her children. "It's getting late," she said. "We should go." He looked up quickly. "Lily, wait." She shook her head gently. "There's nothing more to say. You have your new life. I have mine. I hope it makes you happy." Then she turned toward the door, her children walking beside her. As she reached the exit, the same limousine driver held the door open. The golden lights reflected in her calm eyes. She looked back once, not at Daniel, but at the hall filled with noise and pride, and then stepped outside into the cool night air. The crowd parted silently as she passed. No one dared whisper now. The only sound was the soft click of her heels on the marble floor. Inside, Daniel stood frozen, the applause for the music fading behind him. For the first time that evening, he didn't feel victorious. He felt something else, something he hadn't felt in years: regret. And as the limousine disappeared into the distance, he realized that the woman he once looked down on had walked away stronger, prouder, and freer than he could ever be. The music kept playing, but Daniel could no longer hear it. The laughter, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, all of it faded into the background as he stood staring at the door Lily had just walked through. His fiancée was speaking to guests, pretending everything was fine, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. He knew she was angry, embarrassed, and confused. He had planned for this day to be perfect, to show the world how far he had come, how successful he had become. Instead, the one person he thought he had left behind had managed to steal everyone's attention without saying a cruel word. She didn't need revenge. Her calm dignity had done what humiliation never could. As the evening went on, Daniel tried to smile for pictures, but inside he felt restless. His mind kept replaying the moment when the children called him Dad, the way people had looked at him, the quiet sadness in Lily's eyes. He felt something he hadn't felt in years: shame. Later that night, when most guests had left and only close friends remained, his fiancée pulled him aside. Her voice was cold and sharp. "You need to tell me what's going on," she said. "Those kids. Are they yours?" Daniel hesitated. "I don't know," he muttered, though deep down he knew the truth. The timing, the resemblance, it all made sense. She folded her arms, her eyes full of disbelief. "You don't know?" "Really, Daniel? The way they look at you, the way people whispered, 'Don't lie to me.'" He sighed and rubbed his forehead. "It's complicated." "No," she said firmly. "It's actually very simple. Either you tell me the truth or this marriage ends tonight." Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came. What could he say? That he had left a woman who believed in him? That he had never checked if she was okay? That he didn't even know he had children until they showed up at his wedding? His fiancée shook her head slowly. "I thought I was marrying a man with class. But now I see I'm marrying someone who hides his past like a secret stain." Before he could stop her, she turned and walked out. For the first time that evening, Daniel felt truly alone. The ballroom lights seemed harsh, the decorations meaningless. He took off his tie, sat down at one of the empty tables, and stared at the untouched wedding cake. It looked perfect from the outside, just like his life, but inside it felt hollow. The next morning, the story began spreading. Some of the guests had shared pictures and gossip on social media. "Businessman's ex-wife shows up at his wedding in a limo with 3 children," one post said. Another read, "The kids look exactly like him." By noon, the story was everywhere. Some people found it amusing. Others called it karma. For Daniel, it was a nightmare. His business partners started calling, asking questions. His fiancée's family demanded answers. He tried to focus on work, but he couldn't. Every meeting, every conversation, he felt people's eyes on him, judging him. At night, he couldn't sleep. The image of Lily stepping out of that limousine haunted him. Not because she had embarrassed him, but because she had reminded him of who he used to be before pride changed everything. A few days later, he finally gathered the courage to call her. It took him hours to find her number. When he did, his hands trembled slightly as he dialed. The phone rang 3 times before a calm voice answered. "Hello?" He hesitated. "Lily, it's me." There was silence for a moment. Then she said softly, "I thought you'd call sooner." "I wasn't sure I should," he admitted. "I didn't want to cause any more trouble." "You didn't," she said. "It's already behind me." He swallowed hard. "Those children, they're really mine, aren't they?" "Yes," she said simply. "They're yours." He closed his eyes, his throat tightening. "Why didn't you tell me?" "You made it clear you didn't want anything to do with your old life," she said. "I didn't think you'd want to be a father to them. I didn't want to beg for your attention or money. I wanted them to grow up knowing love, not rejection." Her voice was steady, not angry, just tired. Daniel's eyes burned. "I didn't know, Lily, I swear if I had—" She cut him off gently. "It wouldn't have changed anything. You left because you thought I wasn't enough. I stopped waiting for you to realize I was." For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said quietly, "Can I see them?" There was a pause. "I don't know if that's a good idea," she said. "They don't know who you are, not really. They think of you as a story, not a person." "Please," he said. "I just want to see them." Just once, she hesitated again, then sighed. "All right. Come tomorrow evening. But don't make promises you can't keep." The next day, Daniel drove himself to her small neighborhood. The houses were modest but neat, with small gardens and the smell of home-cooked meals in the air. He parked near her house and sat for a long time before getting out. His hands shook slightly as he walked up to the front door. When Lily opened it, she looked different, softer, more at peace. Her children were in the living room, drawing on the floor. They looked up when he entered, curious. Lily smiled faintly. "Kids, this is Daniel. He's an old friend." The youngest one, a little boy with bright eyes, ran up to him. "You look like me," he said cheerfully. Daniel couldn't help but laugh. "Do I?" The boy nodded. "Mom says I got my eyes from someone who dreams big." Daniel felt his heart twist. He knelt down, smiling through the ache in his chest. "Then you must be a big dreamer, too." The boy grinned and ran back to his siblings. Lily watched quietly, her arms crossed, but her expression calm. Daniel looked around the house. It was simple but full of warmth. Drawings on the fridge, small shoes by the door, laughter echoing through the rooms. He realized that while he had spent years chasing money and power, she had been building something far more real. They sat down after the children went to play in the backyard. "You've done well," he said softly. "They're happy." "That's all that matters," she replied. He nodded. "I'm sorry, Lily, for everything. For leaving, for not being there, for thinking you weren't enough." She looked at him for a long moment. "Apologies can't change the past, Daniel. But they can make peace with it. I've already made mine." He looked down. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I see it now. What I lost." She smiled sadly. "You didn't lose me, Daniel. You just let me go. There's a difference." The sound of the children's laughter drifted in from the yard. Lily stood and went to check on them, leaving Daniel sitting alone. He watched them through the window. The 3 kids running around, their joy pure and unfiltered. Something inside him broke softly. Not out of regret for what he didn't have, but for realizing what really mattered. When he finally stood to leave, Lily walked him to the door. "Thank you for letting me come," he said quietly. She nodded. They don't need anything from you, Daniel. But if you ever decide to be in their lives, do it because you truly want to, not because you feel guilty. I understand, he said. I'll think about it. As he walked to his car, the sky was turning orange with sunset. He looked back once and saw Lily standing at the door, her children holding onto her hands. They looked like a picture of peace, the kind that money could never buy. Driving home, Daniel realized how empty his big apartment felt. The silence pressed against him. He walked through rooms filled with expensive furniture, but no warmth. He thought of the laughter in Lily's home, the smell of bread, the children's voices calling her mom. That night, he couldn't sleep. For the first time, he didn't think about business or reputation. He thought about the small moments he had traded for success. Dinners with his family, quiet nights talking, the joy of belonging somewhere real. Days passed, but the image of that house stayed in his mind. He began visiting the children quietly, bringing them books, helping with their school projects. Lily didn't stop him. She watched carefully at first, but soon she saw he was trying, not out of guilt, but out of love. His fiancée never came back. The wedding, the plans, the social circles, all of it slowly faded from his life. But something else took its place, a kind of peace he hadn't known in years. He started giving more time to charities, helping single parents with jobs and education. He told no one why, but Lily knew. She saw it in the quiet way he had changed. One afternoon, as they watched their children play together, Daniel said softly, "I don't deserve a second chance, but I want to be a better father." Lily looked at him, her eyes gentle. "Then just be one. Don't talk about it." "Do it," he nodded. For the first time, he felt no need to prove himself. Not to the world, not to his pride, just to the people who truly mattered. The hall was filled with music, laughter, and the soft hum of conversation. Everything looked perfect. The flowers, the candles, the guests in their best clothes, all of it painted the picture of a grand celebration. Daniel stood proudly near the stage, shaking hands, smiling for photos, and pretending to be at ease. But deep down, he couldn't ignore the faint uneasiness sitting in his chest. He didn't know why, but something about that day felt heavier than expected. Maybe it was just nerves, he told himself. After all, it wasn't every day that a man married into one of the richest families in town. The ceremony had just started when the sound of a car pulling up outside caught people's attention. It wasn't just any car, it was a long, sleek limousine shining under the afternoon light. The valet rushed forward and the murmurs began even before the door opened. Guests turned their heads, curiosity sparking across their faces. Who could it be? A celebrity? A politician? Someone from the groom's business circle? Then the door opened and out stepped Lily. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. Daniel's heart stopped beating for a second. He blinked, unable to believe what he was seeing. She looked different. Beautiful, yes, but not in the way he remembered. There was a calm strength in her eyes, a quiet confidence that wasn't there before. She wore a simple but elegant dress, the kind that spoke of grace, not wealth. Her hair was neatly tied and her posture was steady and proud. She didn't look like someone trying to prove a point. She looked like someone who had already made peace with herself. The guests whispered among themselves, trying to figure out who she was. And then, from the back seat of the limo, 3 small faces peeked out, 3 identical children dressed neatly, holding small bouquets. They giggled softly as they stepped out, holding Lily's hands. The crowd went silent. Daniel's fiancée noticed his expression change instantly. His smile disappeared. His eyes widened, his lips parted slightly as if he'd seen a ghost. She leaned closer and whispered, "Do you know her?" Her tone was sharp, suspicious. Daniel couldn't answer. He just stared, frozen, his mind racing through years of memories. Late nights in a tiny apartment, Lily's laughter echoing in the kitchen, her tired smile when she handed him her savings to help with his first business deal. He had buried all of that long ago. He thought he'd never see her again. Lily walked forward slowly, her step steady, her eyes meeting his without a trace of bitterness. She gave him a polite smile, one that seemed to say, "You wanted me here, and I came." The children stood beside her, looking curiously at everything around them, the lights, the flowers, the large cake on the table. Daniel's fiancée frowned. "Who are they?" she asked again, louder this time. Her parents turned to look at Daniel, waiting for an explanation. The room's energy shifted. The music faded as the band stopped playing, sensing the tension. Lily stopped a few steps away from Daniel. "Congratulations," she said softly. "You look happy." Her calm tone only made him more nervous. "What are you doing here?" he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "You invited me," she said simply. "I thought it would be rude not to come." Daniel's fiancée looked from one face to another, confusion growing into anger. "You know her well enough to invite her?" she demanded. Before he could answer, one of the little boys tugged on his sleeve and said, "Daddy, is that your new wife?" The entire hall gasped. For a second, Daniel couldn't breathe. The words hit like a storm. Every head turned. His fiancée's face turned pale, her eyes wide with shock. Her parents exchanged looks of disbelief. A few guests tried to whisper quietly, but their voices carried across the silent room. "Daddy?" someone repeated, stunned. Lily gently pulled her son's hand away and whispered, "Don't say that, sweetheart." Her voice trembled slightly, but she stayed composed. She turned back to Daniel, her eyes steady. "They didn't mean to cause a scene," she said softly. "They just wanted to see their father." Daniel's fiancée stepped back, shaking her head. "Their father? What is this? Tell me this isn't true," she cried, her voice echoing through the hall. Daniel's lips moved, but no sound came out. His throat felt dry. It's complicated," he finally managed, but the words sounded weak and meaningless. Lily sighed quietly. She hadn't planned to stay long, and she hadn't expected this kind of attention. "I didn't come here to cause problems," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "I only came because you invited me. I wanted to show the children the man who used to be part of our lives." Her words were calm, yet they carried a weight that made Daniel shrink inside. He felt the eyes of everyone in the room burning into him. The woman he had left behind, the woman he once looked down on, was now standing in front of him, dignified and unbroken, while his perfect image began to crack. His fiancée's father stepped forward, his voice cold. "Is this true, Daniel? You have children with this woman?" His tone carried the sharpness of disbelief and disappointment. Daniel swallowed hard. "It was a long time ago," he said weakly. "It doesn't matter anymore." Lily looked at him then, and for the first time there was something like sadness in her eyes. "It mattered when I was raising them alone," she said softly. "It mattered when they asked why their father wasn't around. But you're right, it doesn't matter now." Her calmness cut deeper than anger ever could. Daniel lowered his gaze, ashamed. For years he had convinced himself that she was the problem, that leaving her was necessary for his success. But now, standing before her, he saw how wrong he'd been. She hadn't come to humiliate him. She had come to show him the truth, what real strength looked like. The guests began whispering louder now. Some looked at Lily with admiration. Others stared at Daniel with judgment. His fiancée, trembling, turned away and muttered, "I can't do this." She rushed toward the door, her parents following behind. Their faces filled with anger and humiliation. Daniel reached out as if to stop her, but she didn't even look back. The sound of her heels clicking against the floor echoed through the silent hall. The music had stopped. The laughter was gone. Only the whispers remained. Lily bent down to her children and said softly, "Come on, it's time to go." She turned to Daniel one last time. "You wanted me here to see what I lost," she said quietly. "But I think today showed something different." He didn't respond. He couldn't. Every word she spoke felt like a mirror showing him everything he had tried to hide. As she walked out, the crowd silently parted for her. No one stopped her. No one dared say a word. The children waved goodbye to the people around them, not realizing the storm they had just walked through. Outside, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow on the limousine. Lily helped the children inside, then paused for a moment to take a breath. She looked back at the building, at the grand doors closing behind her, and felt a strange calm wash over her. It was finally over. The years of hurt, the unanswered questions, the weight of being forgotten. She had faced it all and walked away standing tall. Inside, Daniel stood motionless, staring at the empty doorway. The room that had once been full of laughter now felt suffocating. His fiancée was gone, the guests were whispering, and the image he'd built so carefully had fallen apart in just a few minutes. He sank into a chair, covering his face with his hands. The truth he had buried for so long had finally caught up with him. He had thought success could erase the past, but all it did was make the fall harder. Meanwhile, in the car, Lily's children giggled, telling her how pretty the wedding decorations were. She smiled softly, listening to their innocent chatter. They didn't understand what had happened inside, and she was glad. They didn't need to carry that pain. They deserved peace, love, and a better future. As the limousine drove away, Lily looked out the window one last time. There was no anger in her heart, only closure. She had faced the man who once made her feel small, and she realized she no longer needed his approval. She had everything that truly mattered sitting right beside her. The city lights began to shine as the car moved farther away. For the first time in years, Lily felt free, not because of wealth or revenge, but because she had found her strength again. And that strength was something no one could ever take from her. The limousine moved quietly through the evening traffic. Inside, Lily sat beside her children as they chatted about the wedding hall, the lights, and the big cake they had seen. Their laughter filled the car, innocent and light, washing away the heavy silence that had followed her out of the hotel. She smiled as she listened to them. For the first time in a long while, her heart felt calm. She glanced out the window at the city lights flashing by and thought about everything that had happened that day. It had been strange seeing Daniel again. Stranger still to see how much and yet how little he had changed. He was still proud, still worried about appearances, still hiding behind the image he had built. But beneath that she had seen fear, fear of the truth, fear of facing what he had done. And for the first time she didn't feel angry. She felt pity. When she reached home, the children ran ahead laughing as they took off their little jackets. The house wasn't huge, but it was warm, filled with signs of love. Drawings on the fridge, small toys on the sofa, a faint smell of dinner still in the air. She stood at the doorway for a moment, just taking it in. This was her real world. This was peace. She helped the children get ready for bed. They were still talking about the party. One of them asked, "Mom, will Daddy come see us again?" The question hit her heart, but she kept her voice steady as she tucked them under the blanket. "Maybe one day," she said softly. "But even if he doesn't, you have me. That's what matters." They nodded, sleepy-eyed and trusting. Soon they drifted off, their soft breathing filling the room. Lily stood there watching them, thinking about the road that had led her here. There had been days when she didn't think she could go on, when the bills piled up, when the nights were cold and lonely, when she felt invisible to the world. But she had kept moving. Step by step, she built something solid out of the pieces that had been left behind. And now, standing there, she finally understood that all of it, the pain, the struggle, the heartbreak, had shaped her into the woman she was. A few days later, a letter arrived. It was from Daniel. She hesitated before opening it. The handwriting looked unfamiliar, messy, hurried, nothing like the man she used to know. Inside, the letter was short. He wrote that the wedding had been called off, that his fiancée's family had broken ties after what happened. He said he was sorry for what he did years ago, sorry for not being there for her or the children. He asked if he could see them. Lily sat quietly, reading the words over and over. There was a time she would have cried or maybe felt relief. But now she just felt tired, not angry, not bitter, just done. She folded the letter neatly and placed it on the table. She didn't know if she would answer. Maybe someday, but not yet. Some wounds didn't need reopening. In the weeks that followed, she focused on her business. Her small clothing line had started gaining attention, especially for its simple handmade designs. Customers liked her honesty, her care for detail. Orders began coming in faster than she could handle, and she hired 2 women from her neighborhood to help. Each morning, the little workshop buzzed with laughter, chatter, and the sound of sewing machines. It wasn't a big empire, but it was hers, something built from the ground up without anyone's help or pity. Sometimes she would think about that day at the wedding and she would smile to herself, not out of pride or revenge, but because she knew she had faced it with grace. She had walked into a room full of people who once looked down on her and walked out with her head high. That was enough. Meanwhile, Daniel's life had changed quickly. The failed wedding had become the talk of his business circle. Some of his partners began to distance themselves, worried about the rumors. His fiancée's family withdrew their investments, and slowly, his reputation started to slip. He tried to fix things, tried to explain, but people weren't as forgiving as he hoped. They whispered behind his back, not about his success, but about the man who had abandoned his family and been exposed on his own wedding day. He reached out to Lily again, calling once, then twice, but she didn't answer. He sent messages asking to see the children, but she stayed silent. Not because she wanted to punish him, but because she knew he wasn't ready. He wanted to make himself feel better, not truly make things right. One afternoon, a few weeks later, Lily took her children to the park. It was sunny, the air soft and warm. The triplets ran around the playground, laughing and chasing each other. She sat on a bench watching them, a peaceful smile on her face. A few other parents nearby recognized her from a local magazine article that had featured her business. One of them approached and said, "You're the lady with the handmade designs, right?" "I love your work," Lily thanked her politely. Compliments still felt strange sometimes, but she was learning to accept them. The woman smiled and said, "You seem so calm. You must be really proud." Lily looked at her children and nodded. "Yes," she said softly. "More than I can say." In that moment, she realized something important. She didn't need anyone's validation anymore. Not Daniel's, not society's, not anyone's. Her life was far from perfect, but it was real. It was built on honesty, hard work, and love. The kind of love that didn't fade when money disappeared. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she received another message from Daniel. This time it was simple. "I just wanted to say thank you for coming that day." It opened my eyes. "I hope one day the kids can forgive me." She read it quietly, then typed a short reply. "They already have." Children forgive easily. It's the adults who take longer. Then she put the phone away and turned off the lights. That was the last time they spoke for a long while. Months passed. Her business continued to grow. She was invited to speak at a local event for small business owners, where she shared her story. Not about heartbreak, but about resilience. She talked about how success doesn't always come from big opportunities, but from the quiet moments when you choose not to give up. People listened, inspired by her honesty. Some even cried. After the event, she stood outside the hall looking at the night sky. The city lights sparkled below, just like they had the night of Daniel's wedding. But this time the air felt different. There was no pain, no anger, just peace. When she returned home, the children ran to hug her, each trying to tell her about their day at the same time. She laughed, holding them close. "One at a time," she said, smiling. Their small voices filled the house, and she thought, "This is my real happily ever after." That night, as she tucked them into bed, one of them whispered, "Mom, you're the best." She kissed their foreheads and said, "No, I'm just someone who never gave up." As the house grew quiet, she stood by the window watching the stars. Life had taken her through storms she never expected, but it had also led her to moments of beauty she couldn't have imagined. The past no longer hurt. It had simply become part of her story, a reminder of how far she had come. Somewhere across the city, Daniel sat alone in his apartment staring at an old photograph, the one where he and Lily stood together years ago. Back when dreams were small and love was enough, he realized too late that he had traded something priceless for something empty. But even he couldn't deny the truth. Lily had won, not in revenge but in peace, and that was what she had always deserved. The story of Lily and Daniel became something people whispered about for years, not as a scandal, but as a lesson. A reminder that life has a way of turning tables, that kindness and strength outlast pride, and that sometimes the person you try to break ends up shining the brightest. As time passed, Lily never spoke bitterly of her past. When her children grew old enough to ask questions, she told them the truth gently, without anger. "People make mistakes," she said, "but what matters is that you learn from them and never let those mistakes define you." And that's how she lived, simple, strong, and free. In the end, she didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Her life spoke for itself. She had turned pain into purpose and loss into love. And as she watched her children grow, their laughter filling the rooms of the little home she had built, she knew that her story had found its perfect ending. Not in wealth, not in revenge, but in peace.